Summary of the Daughters of the Late Colonel by Katherine Mansfield. Constantia and Josephine Pinner spent a week making plans after their father's passing. Constantia and Josephine are lying in the same bed in the same room. Constantia asks Josephine if they should give the servant their father's top hat. Josephine disagrees and thinks that the servant is wearing their dad's hat. The sisters talk about turning their dressing gowns black and sending letters to Ceylon, where their father worked, with the news of his death. Constantia is upset because a mouse got into their bedroom. Earlier, the sisters talked about letting Nurse Andrews, who took care of their father, stay with them for the rest of the week. They worry, though, that she might want to be paid for staying. Constantia and Josephine are worried about eating with Nurse Andrews because she is scared of butter and doesn't know how to behave at the table. Their maid, Kate, has a bad mood and is hard to work with, so they don't like giving her orders. Constantia and Josephine think about the last time they saw their father living. He had opened one eye and glared at them in a mean way, which made them feel bad. When the priest Mr. Farolles came and asked if the end was quite peaceful, the sisters said yes, even though they knew it wasn't. Also, when Mr. Farolles suggested a little communion, the sisters were terrified because they didn't think they could do it in their flat, which didn't have an altar or room for such a ceremony. Constantia and Josephine are also worried about how they buried their father, which they think they did without asking his permission. Josephine sobs and says, "Father will never forgive us for this, never." Finally, the sisters decide to try to organize their father's things, but they are turned off by their father's cold, white room with its furniture covered. Josephine starts to worry that her father is hiding in the chest of drawers, hidden away and ready to spring. In the end, Constantia tells them to be weak for once and leave his things alone without going through them. Later, the sisters talk about sending their father's broken watch to their brother Benny, who works in Ceylon. To do this, they would have to use a runner, a local person who brings packages. They remember Benny on a veranda, dressed in colonial clothes and standing next to his wife Hilda, the unknown sister-in-law. Josephine thinks that their nephew Cyril, who is Benny's son, might be more usual to take the watch. Before their father died, Cyril came to see them more than once. Cyril was ready to go, but Constantia and Josephine made him stay and talk to his grandpa, who was clearly getting old and rude to his grandson. Back in the present, Constantia and Josephine are thinking about whether or not they should fire Kate. They think that they won't need her help anymore since their father is no longer around to eat. The sisters don't know much about cooking, and they don't know if they can trust Kate. Constantia thinks Kate goes through their things while they're gone. The sisters can hear a barrel organ on the street outside. This is a common sound in the area, and it used to annoy their father. He would thump his walking stick over and over to get their attention and get them to ask the organ grinder to leave. Josephine thinks about how their mother died when they were young and sent them to live with their Aunt Florence. She wonders if she and Constantia would have gotten married if their mother had lived. But there had been no suitors, except for a strange man in Eastbourne, where they stayed in a boarding house and left a note outside their room that neither sister could figure out. Constantia thinks about how she and her sister Josephine have spent their lives serving their father, but it doesn't seem real to her because it all happened in a kind of tunnel. She doesn't know what she wants from the future, and when she starts to tell Josephine this, her sister cuts her off. In the end, though, neither of them can remember what they were going to say.
About the author. Katherine Mansfield was born Catherine Beecham into a wealthy and well-connected New Zealand family. Her grandfather Arthur Beecham was a member of the New Zealand Parliament, and her father Harold Beecham was a well-known New Zealand banker. Elizabeth von Arman, her cousin and a famous modernist writer in her own right, was also a member of the Beecham family. But life in the Beecham family was often unstable. Catherine and her 4 brothers moved around New Zealand when they were young and often met Maori people. Mansfield is known for making Maori characters in her stories seem likable. Eventually, Beecham moved to London to go to Queen's College. After a few years, she moved back to New Zealand and started writing the short stories that made her famous. She used a fake name, Kay Mansfield, and went back to London, where she joined the avant-garde writing scene. Mansfield started dating John Middleton Murray, who was the editor of the little magazine Rhythm, which focused on books and the arts. The death of her younger brother Leslie Beecham, a soldier in France during World War I, was the most important tragedy in Mansfield's life. She lost a baby in 1909 and fought with her attraction to and affairs with women. After Leslie died, Mansfield wrote a lot. She was forced by this tragedy to think about her childhood in New Zealand with her brothers. Leonard and Virginia Woolf ran the Hogarth Press, which released one of her most famous stories in 1916. It was called Prelude and was about a New Zealand family. Mansfield died in 1923 from complications of cancer, but that didn't stop her from writing a number of well-received works in her last years, including 2 collections of short stories called Bliss and The Garden Party. Mansfield is known as a strong supporter of avant-garde modernism and a sharp observer of how modern conflict and division affect people. Her stories are full of clever ways to look at sexuality, family ties, class differences, and gender roles.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.